What's a bull job you can't believe actually exists? There's an entire book about this. The author said one job he came across was while waiting on a carpenter to fix his shelves at the university he worked at. The carpenter had so many requests that the university hired someone to apologize that he couldn't get to it sooner. Or another aspect to a BS job is being so disliked by your boss that you are assigned less and less work to the point you walk off the job for 6 years and nobody notices until they're ready to give you an award, which seems ridiculous until you learn that actually happened. Well, I bet the apologizer got paid more than a second carpenter would cost, but they only had a budget for one carpenter? Story 2. Talk about boring. I worked for a company doing quality control. It consisted of me listening to calls from telephone agents to customers, getting them to sign up for a service. I was to catch fraud on the part of our associates. Now, occasionally, it could get a little exciting. You told the customer what, and that was the end of their career with our company. Most of the time, it was mundane calls, sometimes 2-hour calls with both parties talking about things like cats or relatives. Not my concern, but I still had to listen. I fell asleep on occasion and would have to start the call all over. One time I woke up and looked down the aisle and just about my entire department was asleep. Story 3. I have a former coworker that left her job to become a life coach. She definitely was not someone that needed to be giving life advice, and she was 26 years old. I still follow her on Facebook and can't figure out what she does or how she makes money. She keeps bragging that she makes 7 figures a month. Everyone that comments on her posts are also people who are life coaches in some capacity. So it's like this weird internal MLM circle of people just buying sessions with other life coaches. I can't imagine anyone outside of this buying life coaching lessons from any of these people. Hold on, wait. She makes 7 figures a month? Are they stick figures, Life coach stick figures? Yeah. Story 4. My friend works for a very large company that has 8 levels of management above him in IT. They have 6-figure management jobs that oversee something like 3 to 5 IT folks, and the guy above them manages 3 to 5 managers, etc., etc. He says that with the job he does, he can have 7 different levels of management and no one cares what one level says, and crap can instantly change depending on random changes in the whims of any of them. Software developer here. When I finish a task in Jira, I drag and drop it to ready to test. Immediately after that, the system sends an email to all interested parties. 2 seconds after that, an idiot manager emails me to ask what's the status of my task. It really makes him mad when you don't respond because, dude, you literally just got an email saying what the status is. Story 6. Mine, I do pharmacy reconciliation. The insurance company's databases are so crap as well as the pharmacies, and how they all run together just creates such a mess that the company I work for exists to reconcile the prescription with the payment. I then work as a support person for the account analyst. My job takes 20 to 30 minutes to do because I make very efficient macros. My manager is somewhat aware that I have broadband and tasked me with a database cleanup job that would literally take 40 plus years to verify and clean, so I don't really do it. What's the point? I work at home, so I get paid about $170 an hour. Story 7. Recruiters. I recently had to do a phone interview with one of these people. She called from some area code I've never even heard of. She didn't ask me a single question about my knowledge of cars and the related parts. What's your biggest accomplishment? I sold a lot of car parts last month. What's something you're proud of? I know a lot about car parts. I didn't get a follow-up interview. I doubt anyone at the local dealership even ever knew I applied for the job. It was ridiculous. Story 8. I do special projects for members of the C-suite in pharma. I've worked with a number of CFOs, company presidents, and CEOs. There's never any substance to any of them. They are usually putting on a front of phony confidence for about 99% of the day, but behind closed doors, they are emotionally unstable and usually scared or incredible idiots. The closer you get to the top, the more you see it's all built on hype. Fortune 10 companies, they just talk and make bad choices all day. And when things fail, they either get ousted by the board within a year with a huge payout, millions, or they stay on and fire all the people they managed and relied on, and then they start over, trial and error at scale. C-suite members are worthless and not worth anything close to what they get paid. Story 9. I can't believe my job exists. I'm basically being paid $17,000 a year to do nothing. Mostly busy work and the crap work that the manager doesn't want to do, but sometimes very literally nothing. It told me that I was being hired as a dispensing optician. That's what I was trained to do, but that's not actually the job they hired me for. There's no way they could have told anyone what the job actually is because probably no one would take the job if they were honest about it. The manager is lazy as hell and just wanted someone to come in and do all the grunt work that she doesn't want to do, cleaning, inventory, filing, keeping stuff organized. And there's not enough of that stuff to do to actually fill the schedule they hired me for. I spend about 25% of my work week doing actual opticianry, 25% doing the grunt work, and the other 50% is spent literally doing, well, nothing. I sit around, listening to the radio, waiting for customers to come into the shop. When I work alone, I'm on my phone most of the time. I have literally sat in the lab, surfing social media and dozing off for as long as 3 straight hours. If I doze off, the door alarm will wake me up whenever a customer comes in. Story 10. A lot of the C-suite jobs, their job is to hire people smarter than them to do their job for them and then occasionally make a decision that those people they've hired could easily make as a collective. It's insane that they're viewed by society generally as the hardest working of a company, and when they do demonstrably the least, the people at the bottom and middle of the company actually put in work. The top just acts important while ensuring their job is entirely handled by people they hire, or more accurately, people hired by the people they hire. Story 11. I worked for this place called All Connect that was pretty terrible. They're just messing around from start to finish. Here's the scheme. You call your electric company to tell them you moved. They tell you they can get other utilities transferred to your new place too. Your electric company then sends you to All Connect. I think I transferred somebody's utilities once. What we got paid to do is pester the crap out of power customers to get them to sign up for a new internet service at their new home. Sometimes the power company would tell the customers, let me get you transferred so they can finalize this for you. And then they got me, and my job was to sell them crap. It felt sleazy from start to finish, so yeah, I quit. Story 12. US, there's someone in hospitals who takes all those patient satisfaction surveys and compiles the data from them, adds in the comments, and then sends it to the Vice President of Patient Care, VPOPC, which is the new name for Vice President of Nursing. This paper pusher / data collector is a bachelor's level or greater graduate of nursing. The VPOPC then sends out the data with a strongly worded email to the managers to do better. The managers then send a strongly worded email to the bedside nurses. The bedside nurses have very little to do with the patient survey responses because we can't control the patient's illnesses and we can't make them 100% comfortable because they are sick. Story 13. Door to door with no shame. I'll explain myself better. Once inside the house and after showing a specific tangible product to some people, the nonsense part is asking them for their friends' family members' phone numbers just to go to their houses and show the product. That's very embarrassing. And the world, when you act in that shameless way, starts hating you and has every right to do that no matter who the people you meet during those job days are. Well, I did that job for 2 months and I'll never do it again. Never. Some jobs are driven by greed, and in that case, I was exploited by the agency I worked for. Lies upon lies, and yes, this went personal, but just choose wisely the job you choose to do, even in your worst moments of your financial life. The true value is inside your spirit, not outside. What a horrible job. Story 14. I work for one of the largest university systems in the whole world. I met a woman whose full-time job is to write thank you notes to donors, and she oversees 2 people. One writes notes for donations under $5,000, the other handles $5,000 and up. She wishes she had a third person to help. The other part of her job is going to the president's house monthly to help them hand-sign birthday cards and deciding who is birthday card signed by the president worthy. Story 15. My manager's spouse has had a series of jobs in administration of nonprofits and charities. She generally moves on when the BS get too big for her to swallow, but it's pretty much universal in the secondhand stories I get. I know my manager makes solid money and remarks his wife makes more than he does, even drifting in between these jobs, which are essentially bureaucratic nonsense, management glad-handing jobs that interface with local politicians and community organizations. Story 16. Mine. I sell phones. My job is to scam idiots into paying more than they have to because they were too dumb or lazy to check the website and pick a plan and phone on their own. Every company knows this is our job as salespeople. We are straight up taking advantage of the customer's lack of information to charge them more than we have to. While I don't feel too bad since every customer could just self-serve on the website very easily, and many are just incompetent and have low digital and normal literacy, it's still a terrible job. Story 17. I used to have a lot of friends who were computer engineers working for big firms, and honestly, from the sounds of it, I couldn't call what they were doing, quote-unquote, work. They would go to a company for 6 months to a year, get shuffled around between different teams and projects, go to Zoom meetings for this or that team or project, until they got reassigned to something else or got a new job offer and get paid $100,000 per year to do pretty much nothing but sit on Discord and play games from home, while occasionally miking up for a Zoom or Teams call. I don't understand that industry at all. Story 18. Many partly esoteric coach. They get rich off stupid people, I guess. A lot of corporate nonsense, advisors, anything with more phrases than knowledge. I don't understand street work, but that's maybe just me. I don't want to have intimacy with anybody I don't really know or just pay, but it's big, I know. Anybody getting paid millions for being a CEO or similar. I've never seen a company in my country benefit from that if they are that big. Decisions always feel stupid on a big stage. I guess everybody knows better, but I could have seen this coming is just true on a big scale for me. Story 19. Not a BS job exactly, but I used to work at a research institution and they had a full metal fabrication shop on site. I reckon those lads would, no joke, make about one thing for work in an entire year. They had every possible fabrication tool you could imagine. Super nice guys. At the same place, there was also a mailroom at one of the really small sites. Those guys would literally read the paper or talk nonsense for 7 hours and spend 1 hour accepting deliveries and calling the person responsible that their mail was there, at most. Again, absolutely super nice guys. Story 20. Testing vapes, like just puffing them to see if the mango vape actually tastes like mango. To be fair, I say that, but recently my dad bought a beer and instead of having to orange beer in it, it had a red cider, so fair enough. Maybe if they didn't do this, someone would end up with a strawberry flavored vape that says it's supposed to have blueberry ice flavor inside, but like if your whole multiple hour job is 24/7 puffing vapes, that doesn't seem too safe. So, story 21. Agreed on chiropractors. Good coaching doesn't rely on pseudoscience. Bad coaches and coaching doesn't mean that all coaching is bad. The comparison to the restaurant is a false equivalency. By your logic, if some dishes at one restaurant are poison, all restaurants are poison. Each coach is a different restaurant. Back to chiros, they all use the same basis practices and call it medicine. Coaching, the effective and useful kind, uses good, proven methods to listen and help clarify, make plans, and hold people accountable. It's not medicine, as therapy is. On the other hand, some coaches claim that Reiki is a thing. That's not coaching, that's nonsense. Story 22. I worked a night watchman job for about 20 years where all I did was check exterior doors once a night in several small buildings and both interior and exterior doors in one large building. I sat in my vehicle watching the parking lot until employees left and then had the whole property for upwards of 6 hours or so to myself with no oversight. I did all kinds of non-work related stuff, including watching cable TV, metal detecting. It was a large and old property, and I found a lot of stuff like coins, minor Civil War artifacts, jewelry, coins dating back to the 1850s, and interesting household items like a silver thimble and such, hanging out with friends, playing video games, and many, many more activities. I ate their food and used their laundry facilities too. I took advantage in any way I could, benefit or take advantage. I did, including some serious things I won't mention. Good times. Story 23. Call center, whatever the heck it does or for whoever it does. Here's an example. Dear Americans and Canadians, no, you're not being called from FedEx to confirm addresses, and neither are you calling FedEx because of some ID number to correct an address to deliver on the next business day. It's a data mart call center. There are a lot of those over here in Mexico and on the other LATAM countries. Just a low-tier nonsense alternative to production lines in a factory, at least to not stay standing for 10 hours. And yes, Canadians, there are people who can speak French to have a measly bonus pay. Literally, that's all the worth value of learning French in Spanish-speaking countries. I'm not working there anymore. Screw that job. Just do yourselves a favor, hang up and block those calls. Story 24. My job is to not work for the competitors. I have no other tasks or requirements. I'm not required to be at the office. I have a company car and company credit card. I spend thousands every month on their card buying cool tech stuff to play with. Occasionally, I'll find a problem and build a robot or electronic tool to solve it. Occasionally, a coworker will ask for help on something they have run out of other ideas or options for. I may work 40 hours a year, but I know the secret and their sauce, and I'm not bound to keep it secret, so I'm on the payroll to keep me quiet. Story 25. Not just a job, but an entire industry. Health insurance companies exist almost entirely to make it harder for you to get what you need and suck as much money out of you, your provider, and the government coffers as possible. The execs of these places make obscene amounts of money for being not just useless, but actively harmful. Contrast with the alternative of a public agency for healthcare, which would at least have a purpose and also wouldn't pay really well. Worth noting that VA healthcare in the US, the only socialized healthcare system here, consistently receives high marks for patient satisfaction and efficiency. Story 26. Mine. My job basically became redundant when we returned from lockdown and hired additional workers. I literally just forward work up the chain after highlighting keywords in documents. I used to have to write the reports before, but I just feed it into ChatGPT and ask it to highlight the keywords. Nobody has realized anything yet, and I spend most of my day on Reddit or listening to podcasts. I don't feel guilty because the executives above me only work like 2 days a week, constantly mess up and get promoted and are twice my salary, so I guess you could argue that their job is more useless. But I'm on 135,000 AUD for copy-pasting into ChatGPT, so I'm not too jealous. Story 27. Honestly, serving in fine dining, I don't really make an impact on society or bring any change to the world. I usually work less than 30 hours a week and make about $80,000 a year. I have unlimited time off, high stress while I'm at work, but I don't take any work with me. It also keeps me in shape because I walk about 7 miles a shift. It's not an easy job. There's lots of skills required to work in high-end restaurants, but my contribution to the betterment of the human race is non-existent. Story 28. Most companies that are top-heavy, directors, senior directors, VPs, and SVPs, C-suite, every organization I've worked for has too many senior leaders tying up the fixed headcount budget instead of growing lower levels, managers, and below. In my opinion, this is the number one reason layoffs occur. They won't cut their own jobs and salaries or equity, so they cut the lower levels, rehire, rinse, and repeat every 2 years. Also, MBB consultants, I've worked with a few and they are glorified PowerPoint experts paid $200,000 per year with companies paying $500,000 or more per assignment. Oftentimes, advice is not listened to by senior leaders except for layoffs. 100% of consultants I've worked with will manipulate the project engagement savings to make it look better than it really is. It's why MBB companies will lay off consultants every 2 years. HR tends to be useless and will look to remove problem employees as soon as possible ASAP. I never had an AR person look out for the employee. They always protect the company first. Story 29. Video stream controller. My sister works for a large group that manages support staff for the media, cameramen, editors, etc. One day, she had to sanction 2 guys. They had to control the video feeds for a channel broadcast in the Arab world. They had to work in pairs to avoid any interruptions. Their role was to check that the feed was being broadcast properly and to take necessary measures in the event of a problem, so their job was to watch TV. And during their shift, an adult film was shown at the time when cartoons were broadcast in Arab countries. So, back to HR interview, she asked the first one, "Where have you been?" "Well, I went out to eat." And so the other guy, "And you, where were you?" "Well, I wasn't going to leave him to eat on his own, so I went with too." Story 30. My sister went to a private school. She is severely dyslexic, and public schools in my country don't really help you out. So she hung out with really rich people, the kinds that had butlers and a lot of help. One of her friends had this little Maltese, a really cute, very well-mannered dog. One day, this man entered the house and took the dog into another room. My sister asked who that man was and why they just took the dog in a room alone. Her friend explained that he was their dog's therapist and came 2 times a week to have a therapy session with the dog. Dumbfounded, my sister asked how much they were paying him. 300 euros every hour. This absolute genius was paid 600 euro a week just to probably play with a puppy in a room. So I guess scamming rich people actually works. Story 31. Home inspectors. It's a visual inspection of your home on that day. That's it. The report is 75% canned content. They add pics and serial numbers for the appliances and charge upwards of $500 in some areas for about 2 hours of work, maybe 3 if they took a lot of pics. Anything actually wrong with the house, they refer you to someone else who will charge their own fees to assess it. You'd be better off just hiring a plumber, an electrician, and a general contractor to do a walkthrough and actually call out things they need to fix. It's an entirely made-up industry and it doesn't even exist in the 70s. Now we've all been conditioned to think you can't buy a house without one. And if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 32. Strategy consultants. Yeah, thanks for the 297 slides nobody will read that you've used with 63 other companies already, and that you can summarize as follows. Cut staff to make room for more money for C-suite, board of directors, and some shareholder dividend before year end, after which our non-existent advice will fail spectacularly so you can bring us back to fix the mess we created and pay us another few million for the same nonsense again. Oh, and also our consultants are 26 with 0 years of actual experience. Story 33. A large portion of my department's work is nonsense. I work OEM repair parts for a manufacturer. Unless the parts are proprietary, custom machine parts, pre-programmed electronics, 90% of our business is redundant. If repair service companies and techs would just do a quick Google search and buy direct from that item's manufacturer, motors, brakes, some electronics, they'd save a huge amount of money. Frankly, the way the industry is structured, the service companies are ditching smarts and lower costs for lucrative service contracts. We are seeing more business than ever because of incompetence from the industry at large. Story 34. Mine, to be honest. I mean, I don't make a huge amount of money, but I do pretty good for being a chef. I was removed from my front of house role a couple of years ago due to a bunch of drama. I was put back into my old role as lead cook, but I didn't want to do any of the positions, so instead of losing me, my boss let me make up a completely new position. I make my own schedule, I cook whatever I want, whenever I want. I have 4 weeks PTO, health insurance, and I generally like my coworkers. Also, my stress went from being through the roof with a sore jaw constantly from clenching it so much to barely any stress at all. Story 35. Apparently, my coworker who was making $20K more than I was, we're both admin assistants, she had 1 more year of tenure than I did. She only had to report to 1 person and I was running after 2 and whatever else came my way. She quit last year, didn't know how good she had it, and then admitted she hadn't done any work for 6 months. She'd just come to work and sit, and thanks to her, no one is getting anywhere close to that kind of pay for what we do. Story 36. Big law attorney. Partners can pull 7 figures. Is so specialized that even their ostensible value add is generally passing awareness of a few dozen relatively inconsequential laws and regulations, plus glorified spell check document cleanup. The reality is they largely judge themselves internally and bizarrely seem to be judged externally by clients primarily on the basis of how quickly they can respond to emails. There is seemingly either no correlation or even an inverse correlation between demonstrated substantive ability and success within the field. Many of these guys and gals seem to struggle intensely to write more than 3 or 4 complete sentences or to read more than 5 or 6 on any given topic. The scariest part? There are tens upon tens of thousands of them in the United States alone. Story 37. I knew a guy who did sheetrock installation for a graphic designer. Well, technically, their city had a rule where women and minority-owned small businesses had priority in obtaining government contracts as long as they could perform the work. So an African-American woman he knew set up a laptop and color printer in the back room of a strip mall store incorporated as a graphic design business, then bid on local construction projects like replacing sheetrock in government buildings. She would usually get the contract and then subcontract it out to actual construction companies like his, so the work actually got done and pocketed the difference. She would do some actual graphic designing on occasion, but the vast majority of her company's business was being the middlewoman for these contracts. Story 38. Building movie sets in the IATSE union. Everything is done from scratch. Instead of buying doors or windows at Home Depot, they will build them from scratch using prop makers that are paid $60 or more per hour, plus 1x to 2x overtime pay. They also build walls from scratch using plywood and plaster, then skim coat and seal them many steps before painting, instead of just using drywall, because there's a plastering job in the union that they have to preserve. My checks as a starting plasterer were about $4,000 per week after taxes. We work 6 to 7 days a week, 12 hours a day for 3 months to build a 4-room house interior on a soundstage. It was a huge waste of time and resources, and we spent most of my time hiding from the union leads on the direction of my team lead because we don't want to finish too soon and put ourselves out of work before filming began. We had to stretch out the work so it would last. Story 39. If you don't do it well, product manager. It's so easy for lazy, inept, and morally bankrupt people to succeed in this role because it often takes years to be able to see if they meet their goals. I am a product manager and I take a lot of pride in my work, having worked my way up from the bottom and worked directly with engineers for years. But I work with others who came from more strategic roles and just learned to play the game, and they don't care about producing anything of value, only playing to leadership. The average tenure is 2.5 years. Story 40. I would say petty influencers, most celebrities, any flavor of corporate consultant, and to some extent luxury real estate agents. That said, I have met some real estate agents who really know how to find solutions to complex budget and law issues and property problems. They can be very useful and worthwhile, but an extreme minority. Consultants in the corporate world are just insanely useless as someone who has to interact with them pretty regularly. Story 41. When you work as a government employee or contractor with a top secret clearance after you retire or get laid off, you can work as an escort within classified facilities called SIFs. Escorts are needed when an uncleared person needs to work in the SIF. For example, it might be a top secret data center that needs an air conditioner repair. All the escort has to do is watch the repairman and stay with them throughout the visit. They usually just drag a chair over and sit there while getting paid damn good money. Story 42. Have you ever heard of an urban bat tracker? That's me. I'm the guy who steps into the night when the city sleeps, tracking the unseen ballet of bats against the backdrop of empty offices and starlit skies. My job is a blend of science and solitude. Armed with detectors that translate bat echolocation into something audible, I map their flight, study their behavior, and contribute to research that's vital for urban ecosystem conservation. It's not just a job, it's a commitment to understanding these misunderstood creatures of the night. The experience is surreal. As the world winds down, my work begins. I walk through parks and alleyways, under bridges, and alongside rivers. The city's nocturnal pulse becomes my soundtrack, a car horn here, a distant laughter there, all underlined by the constant rhythmic clicking of my bat detector. Each night is a lesson in patience and awe. Bats, these tiny, agile creatures, dart and dive in the darkness, almost like shadows flitting at the edge of my vision. There's a poetry in their flight, a kind of silent music that fills the night air. The pay is decent, surprisingly. It's a niche field, and expertise in urban wildlife ecology can be hard to come by, but it's not the money that keeps me here. It's the moments of connection, that feeling of being a part of something bigger and wilder right in the heart of the city. Sometimes the most extraordinary things are hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered in the quiet symphony of the night. Story 43. My aunt and her daughter both do seasonal work as hand pollinators and harvesters. Certain types of plants, saffron, vanilla orchids, have very small windows of time when you can pollinate or harvest from them, a couple of hours to a half day. So the growers need people who can work fast and delicately to hand pollinate or harvest whatever plant they're growing. Plus, if the plant is small and they grow in the ground, it's a lot of bending to get down and do whatever has to be done, especially if they have a whole field of tiny flowers and you're using tweezers or a tiny paintbrush. My auntie and cousin have been doing it for years now. They always get called back and make a lot of money for 1 to 2 days of work. Story 44. I drive around and look at parking lot lights at night, making sure there are no outages. I don't fix it, I report it in an app, and the guys with the bucket truck show up later. As part of the overall service my company provides, it's a monthly fee, and I pretty much have a set list of properties I visit either once a month or once a quarter. The pay isn't exceptional, but I basically get paid to listen to podcasts, so no complaints here. They also pay mileage properly, so no tax. Maybe not exactly an answer to the question, but yeah, there's someone that does that. Story 45. IT auditor. I worked with financial auditors to ensure that businesses are doing what they say they are in terms of data protection, access control, cybersecurity, software development, etc. It is a lot of, what are your policies and procedures? Do you follow them? Do they map to NIST, ISO, and other frameworks and best practices? There is a lot of asking questions and ensuring people are doing what they should be doing. Occasionally, you discover fraud or incompetence and get a VP fired. It requires decent IT skills, lots of continuing education, strong soft skills, and a solid nonsense detector. I work mostly remotely. I get European levels of vacation with American IT pay and no mandatory overtime. I get paid to do training, attend conferences, and get certs and CPEs built in by regular hours. Story 46. Cytotechnologist here. One sentence summation of my career is that I screen pap smears for a living. The specimens come from the OB-GYN to the laboratory where they get processed on slides, stains, and cover slip, then brought to our department for microscopic review. The main thing we are looking for are cellular abnormalities known as dysplasia. We mark the cells in question, then forward to the pathologist for final interpretation. If no abnormalities are found, the cytotech can release those cases without MD review. We do find actual cancer from time to time, but the primary purpose of our job and the pap test is to find dysplasia before it turns malignant. The pay is very good these days, anywhere from $35 to $70 per hour, depending on your experience level and location. The education level is a Bachelor of Science degree, then completing an accredited cytotechnology program, which is normally another year. The technology has upgraded from simply using a microscope to many laboratories use semi-automated screening where the computer will show you what it thinks are the most significant fields of view for you to examine, and we are looking at completely digital screening in the near future where these fields of view are displayed on a monitor. That said, the human is still the final arbiter of what is negative and abnormal, for now at least. Story 47. Corrugated fiberboard structural engineer and designer, which is a long-winded way to say that I design cardboard boxes for a living. I make pretty decent money, too. I spend my day in a design lab, think a large, mostly empty room with a lot of corrugated cardboard sheets and a few large CNC flatbed cutting machines. I use a program called Artios CAD to draw a flattened box shape, essentially how it looks before being glued and folded up and assembled, and then that drawing is converted into a physical cutting die to be used on machinery in the factory portion of where I work. It's incredibly fun work and really makes you think about the packaging industry as a whole. We try to avoid non-paper materials at all costs for our products. The boxes tend to be very environmentally friendly. We also source all of our paper from ecologically friendly corrugators who own land and grow trees instead of buying them from deforesters. A lot of my job is making really simple boxes for everyday items. Your typical cardboard box style, 4 flaps on top and bottom, but I get to do more interesting stuff pretty often, like displays. Think the cardboard displays you see in grocery store aisles, and also unique packaging that has to protect the product inside. Story 48. I worked as an organ deliverer. I forgot the official title for around a year. The job was simple. I was stationed in the biggest hospital in my state. If an organ donation was received that needed to go to another hospital for a transplant, it was my job to move it. I was paid $40 an hour to, most nights, sit on my bum in the break room and watch TV or play on my phone. I'd probably only have to deliver something, let's say, once a week at most. It was an okay job, except that it was boring as heck, since the hospital I was stationed at did 95% of all the organ transplants in my state, and the other major hospital that did them was around 3 hours away, and you wouldn't ever have to go up to the north to it. Lots of pay to sit around, but, well, I wasn't exactly feeling fulfilled career-wise. Story 49. PCB cloner here. All machines and gadgets have complicated circuits. It is the first part that fries. Replacements are rarely available as models change, companies shut down, and instruments get old. Only a few people know the work I do, but it is a very demanding job. It's not easy to understand the logic and design and copy a new PCB. My other job is earworm remover. Both jobs pay well, but the first one pays really well. The only problem is I cannot copy secret government PCBs. That is a no-no. My expertise is restricted to household gadgets, old scientific instruments, and old control systems in industries. Story 50. Being a manager for a travel company, I can be at home or anywhere, really. I just have to have my work phone and work laptop with me all the time. I handle finding job sites for the travel employees and handle logistics such as booking their flights, rental cars, etc. It might sound easy, but trust me, it's overwhelming sometimes. Phone calls left and right. Sometimes employees are struggling with delayed flights, or those calls I get at 3 a.m. to help out a new hire employee who traveled overnight and then got a flat tire on the interstate so I can give them advice on what to do. Story 51. I used to build ski lifts, which was pretty niche in and of itself, but the real gem was the person who, once all the towers were up and the main rope was run, came down to splice the rope into a continuous line. Our guy was one of just 6 old-timers in the country who did tow rope splicing for ski lifts, tramways, etc., and they got paid very, very well, but he basically lived 10 months out of the year traveling the country in his pickup truck, so his home life wasn't a very high quality, and the arthritis and scarring on his hands from decades of manipulating steel rope is probably the reason why not many people are willing to take over the reins. Story 52. I have a friend that does land management for those places that offer hunts for rich people. He'll dress the property, for lack of a better term, to make the ideal conditions for quail, hogs, or deer or whatever. He flies around in this little dinky plane, checking on tree cover and looking for bedding areas and whatnot. A big part of his job is blowing up beaver dams and terminating wild hogs. He has a side business, sighting and rifles. He said once that he thought God created hogs for the sole purpose of sighting and rifles. Interesting dude. Story 53. Digital forensics. You handle evidence that involves computers, hard drives, cell phones, etc. for court cases, and sometimes get to hack into phones or dig through hard drives looking for stuff that's hidden. I took a class on it. It seemed really interesting. I then talked to someone who did it for their career who told me in no uncertain terms to find a different field to work in. Apparently, you see a lot of really awful things on a daily basis and have to testify in court pretty often, but you do make decent money with really good benefits. Story 54. If anyone has a suggestion for a career in the medical field, laboratory, etc. that makes at least $100,000 a year starting, preferably a bachelor's but master's is fine too, please let me know. I'm in school now for radiation therapy, but I don't think it's going to pay enough, even though I do enjoy it. I really enjoy helping others. Radiation therapy is very rewarding. I love being there for my patients. The money is just, well, not what I'm looking for. Also, I really don't want to be a nurse. I give props to all the nurses out there, though. I don't know how y'all do it. Story 55. People know the field, but not the details. I'm in cybersecurity sales, specifically banks, but sometimes other companies. You know that FDIC protection? It comes with a stipulation. Annually, those banks have to be tested by a company like ours for security risks. So my job is to convince banks to let my team try to steal from them, and they have to do it, so basically, whoever calls them first gets the job. I get 10% of basic runs and 30% of our big jobs, where we are dressing as cleaners and making copies of ID cards to spoof, etc. Our bottom shelf service is $50,000, and for a full team 2-week test, it's $500,000. I'm a good salesman, so usually it's something in between. The best part of my job is debriefing the client as we go. The contract has upper management and executives in on us doing it, watching us do it, but they can't tell anyone at the bank. So they sit and sweat seeing my guys get closer and closer. That's if the first day doesn't immediately crack them open with an email. Hey, this is Bob in IT and we need your credentials. Those are fun. My favorite was showing a Fortune 500 entertainment company CFO footage of my 20-year-old intern convincing his secretary to let him into the entire financial system where he took $100 million. He called her as a work-from-home security consultant, put an hour-long YouTube video of baby crying noises, and kept apologizing as he slowly turned the volume up every few minutes. The fact my team almost never has to actually hack anything says a lot about how easy it is to get people to give up sensitive info. Story 56. Sometimes being a poll worker can be good money. We had a referendum last month and I worked as an absentee voting officer. I worked 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. attending a 1-hour training session and came in for 2 hours the night before to help our booth supervisor set up as our second in command, 2IC, was sick or something. All up, I got paid about $740. On the day itself, our booth was super quiet, so I spent half the day sitting at a desk waiting for something to happen. The next day, I helped at a depot counting ballots for 9 hours and got paid $46 per hour. Then again, working during the week is not good money, as it only pays $29 per hour. Story 57. I have 2 weird ones. During the day, I'm a government banker. I meet with government officials and help them with lending, liquidity, and payments technology. This involves lots of conferences, which are basically giant parties leading complex fintech implementations. and driving through beautiful country to perform in-person meetings with out-of-the-way counties and cities. Pay starts at $100,000 or more, and by late career, you can easily clear $300,000. By night, I am a mix engineer receiving audio files from clients over the internet and making their home recordings sound like professionally made songs. This one is less of a consistent job and more of a gig economy thing, but once you have a good reputation, you can easily make a few hundred for a few hours' work. Story 58. A bereavement coordinator is someone who helps families with terminally ill or recently departed loved ones. They manage everything from paperwork to appointments, handling the funeral service, and supervising volunteers and staff so that the family going through a difficult time doesn't have to. A bereavement coordinator position is a type of counseling service as well, and you might be responsible for arranging counseling for the bereaved when necessary. With a job like this, you would generally work in hospitals, nursing homes, or in hospice settings. Story 59. I work a not super common job, but a field that's always in need. I'm a NASCO inspector. I pilot robotic cameras down storm and sanitary systems to determine issues and map it out. I make about $2,000 a week with about 50% of the year traveling but home on the weekends. My company works with townships and towns who give us their maps. We bring in jetting equipment to clean the lines and video the lines. We then locate all the points of access and issues with survey equipment to create a GIS map for the client. We also do remediation and other types of work, but it's always different each day. The job only requires basic computer knowledge and only a high school GED equivalent. The only downside is dealing with sewage, but you get enough PPE that it doesn't ever become an issue. Every town, city, etc. needs this kind of work, and some areas of the US pay over $90 per hour for this type of work. And if any of these stories got to you, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.